Hello, and welcome to another episode of Introverted Indies. Alongside my fellow author Lydia Baker, Lucy McLaren, we run this channel as a means of chatting to fellow indie authors, getting to know other people, getting to know other books, which I have to say already is very dangerous for my TBR, which has grown significantly since starting this. So today I'm joined by Rachanee Lumayno. I'll hand over to you, Rashani, to kind of introduce
Thanks.
yourself.
Wow, that's so broad. Hi, I'm Rachanee Lumayno, fantasy author, YA fantasy. I got into writing during the pandemic. I think a lot of people had pandemic babies, right, with their stuff. I should have been baking bread or like Marie Kondoing. Instead, I was like writing a fantasy novel. And like 17 drafts later, I had a book. And I was like, well, why not? And so I just kept writing and stuff. And I love it. It's funny this week we talked about this off podcast. So I'm in LA. I'm right by the fires. I'm like right on the border of evacuation zone as we record this. And I've been reading a lot of fantasy and playing a lot of video games, kind of like as a self-soothe while I watch the news and my world going up in flames. And it just makes me kind of be like, this is why I do what I do. Like those books and stuff have helped me this week just to calm me down. So I feel like if I can just help other people like comfort or like help them have fun or an escape, like I'm doing a good job. That's all I want.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it can be a real comfort to people when it's in difficult times. And yeah, you're right. You're the third author I've spoken to that started during COVID, like as a definite like escape mechanism and just trying to cope with the general stress of what was happening. So tell us more about that first book then. So how did you get started? Was there an idea that you've been thinking about for a while?
hmm So this is going to sound really funny, but I'm also a voice actress. And so during the pandemic, I got more into voice acting and I was doing I still do a lot of audiobook narration. And I'm reading some of these manuscripts and I'm like, I could write a manuscript. It doesn't seem that hard, like they varied on quality, let's just say. And I was like, if they can be published, like, why can't I do something? And I know that sounds really weird, like, what a way to motivate. But right before the pandemic, I was also supposed to be in a Dungeons and Dragons live show podcast. And because of the pandemic, it just got shelved and then it got completely cut. And the backstory for the
Yeah.
character that I was going to play ended up being the backstory for like my first book. So I had this like sense of like, well, I got nothing else to do and I wanted to do this Dungeons and Dragons thing and these people are writing, why can't I? And it just sort of like morphed into like a book.
Yeah, it says that you had that backstory
hmm
already because
Yeah.
you had to come up with your own character then for that D&D campaign. Okay, that's interesting. So you started with that character then.
I mean, like I said, it was 17 drafts on that first book, so obviously I didn't know what I was doing, even though I was like, sure, I can do this. As time has gone on, it's been less and less drafts, which is nice. So right now I am 7 books in a 7 book series. I just finished book 7, so I'm currently editing it right now. And when I started writing, I want to say, like, I know so many authors are like, I had this world and I had a show Bible and I had this whole like thing fleshed out. And I'm like, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know what the world was like until book 3. Like, I was just kind of totally winging it. I am really totally a pantser when it comes to writing and it shows up like in how I structure the thing.
Yeah, no, I get it. I'm a pantser as well. I don't know what it is about plotting. It just really puts me off. It's not exciting, is it? You don't want to just dive in. So that's amazing. So you pantsed a 7 book series, which is impressive.
Mhm.
So you just finished book 7. I feel like we're jumping ahead a bit here, but I need to ask, like, how have you found that wrapping up all the threads that I'm sure have been set in place through books 1 to 6? 7 is like wrap up
It's
time.
funny because since I don't like have a big like broad outline for the series, I've had to make notes like, was it this person's name? Was this the country they're from? Wait, someone's, hurt or injured. I got to remember to take care of that later. So that's what this edit is on book 7 is me going back and like, okay, did
Yeah.
I hit all those details? And it's not that you can't revisit it later, but personally me, so the way I wrote the series, each book is a
Yeah.
standalone set in the same universe because I personally don't always have time to sit down and read like a 15 book series. Like I stopped reading like say the Dresden Files because I'm like I can't. 12 books, are you kidding? I can't. So I wanted something where people could just pick it up and if they like it pick up another one and not necessarily have missed anything. So I think it wasn't until about book 4 that I started
Got
really
ya.
tying in things together where it's like, oh, the events of 4 affect 5, 6, and 7, but it's still light enough that like me personally, I'm not like, oh crap, I forgot
Yeah.
that detail.
Yeah, I like how you've done that because it means that you don't have to be so on it with the threads, right? Like, because they're standalone stories. Yeah, that sounds like a good way to do it. And that sounds great because it means people can just come to your series at any point and read any of the books, it sounds like.
Oh, it's called the Kingdom Legacy series. YA fantasy. You can it's wide, so you can get it Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Kobo, wherever you like to read,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. So it's everywhere.
Cool. So I was going to ask you what the story is, but it sounds like actually it's seven smaller stories set within.
So the original premise was that there would be 7 kingdoms on this continent, and each kingdom had its own special or unique ability, following a character from each of those
Mhm.
countries. And then when I came to book 4, I kind of
Right.
think of 1, 4, and 5 as the trilogy within the series because there's characters that make appearances throughout the whole thing, like little cameos or they play bigger roles, but they're
Hmm.
like supporting characters. And then 4 and 5, I ended up bringing supporting characters from 1 and making it like their main story. But like I said, even in 4, like stuff happens
Yeah.
within the whole world that affects like the through line for later. But again, it's so hard to explain things without giving away spoilers, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I don't know. And I wanted to try like my hand at a mystery, so number 5 is
Hmm.
kind of like a fantasy mystery. So, yeah.
Oh, cool. How did you find that? Like, because that's slightly different, isn't it? Did you have to plot or plan any of that? Because I find I've just done a kind of murder and mystery type thing, and you have to kind of know certain
It was
things, right?
more like how many people can I kill without making it obvious who the murderer is? You know what I mean? Because you can't kill everybody, and then you're like, "Oh, you're the only one left. It must be you," kind of thing. I mean, and part of it is because I am such a pantser, I was like, "Who's gonna die?" And so, like, I did write the first draft, and there was a lot of retooling for sure because I was just like, "Oh,
Hmm.
the end is definitely not the beginning," because you have to pepper those little
Yeah.
clues, right? So that's what I was missing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So prior to writing that first book in during COVID, like, had you dabbled in writing, or was it very much like a learning curve when you were writing that first book? I mean, you said 17 drafts, so perhaps yes, that part of that that drafting process was the learning
I had
curve.
actually been in the world of script writing. So I had done a few feature films and a lot of sketch comedy and stuff like that.
Ah,
And writing a script is different than writing a book, for sure. Like the funny thing is, my first book came in at 50,000 words, and I was like, "Oh, that's
yeah,
short," you know? Like now they're coming in around like 80,000, but um it's just because you're so used in a screenplay, you're so used to like you get in the action, you don't describe things, like you know what I mean? It's just a very different medium. And so I had to rethink that, but still think cinematically and like describe things, but not just be like we're in, we're out, kind of what you would do like on screen. So it's a very different way of thinking. And I understand
yeah,
now why people don't necessarily adapt. Like if your book got picked up, maybe you shouldn't be the one to adapt it to the screen or work with someone who is. You know what I mean? Because it's such a different way of like writing. Yeah,
yeah. Different way of, I guess, picturing the story as well. It's just yeah. So that's that. It sounds like you had to learn.
for sure. And one thing too, when I was writing like scripts, I would edit myself a lot because I was always thinking, if I sell this, a producer's not going to want, say, a Helm's Deep scene with like 1,000 extras. You know what I mean? Just from the money standpoint, or like these elaborate sets. But when you're writing, especially fantasy, I can write whatever I want because the budget is unlimited, you know? Yeah, it's a different, so that's the other thing too, is like I don't have to edit so much myself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, have you learned anything in that kind of seven book process? What's the main thing you'd say that you've learned in publishing all those books? Because that's a lot, right? That's to get under, have it under your belt. And in what, 4 years, right? Like,
1 to 6 are out. Yep.
yeah, so that's a huge amount to have written and published.
Wow. I mean, I learned a lot and I still feel like I'm still learning. Like the biggest thing I found, again, coming from an entertainment background, is it's a long lead time to advertise a book. and I didn't realize how long. Like, I think to do it right,
Mm,
you'd need at least like a year or so. I'm not that patient. But like a film, you can advertise that in a month, right? You can put up a premiere and you can, tell the news outlets and have everyone come. And it's like you can do that
mm,
really fast, but you can't do that with a book because people need time to actually read the darn book and like think about it and
mhm.
review it. And, people have lives, so they have other, things in their reading queue and stuff like that. And I was just like, oh, I can't do that. And so trying to think ahead
Yeah.
that far has been the hardest part as far as the marketing.
Hmm.
I have really adhered to this is getting into craft now. I really adhere to a four draft system now because you can just beat a thing to death, honestly. You could just be like,
Right.
25 drafts later, it's still not done. So now I'm like four
Yeah.
drafts. So I write the first draft, I go over it again to make sure it's, grammatically okay that I can tell and, contently coherent, I guess would be the way to put it. So that'll be like my 1.5. I send it to my editor. He gives me notes. I'll go over it again. And then I also do my own audiobook narration. So I consider that my final edit because I can read it slowly and make sure that everything's perfect. So I'm like, if I can't get it out in four
Yeah.
drafts, something's wrong.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
It helps that I'm in the same world too, though, and now I understand, like, oh, these characters, like, it goes faster, like, I'm gonna start a new series soon, and I'm like, "Oh
Yeah.
boy," like, it's a whole new territory, it's gonna take me a while.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It must be nice to have that familiarity as the books have gone on. You've come to know that world more and more and the characters in it. So it must be nice, a nice feeling to have. It,
Yeah, I mean, I have an idea for, like, a couple spin-offs, but, like, I only have 2 ideas, and I don't wanna write unless I have, like, 4 or 5 because I feel like, just, like, then it's like you've run out of ideas. And I'm gonna start like a new series completely unrelated. So I'm like, I hope people like it because I think we get pigeonholed, right? As writers, like,
yeah.
J.K. Rowling, she's only Harry Potter. Can she write anything else? I mean, she's tried, but like nobody wanted it. So that's like the danger of like, well, come on, guys, I can write outside of this world too. But
So that sounds like you're veering off.
yeah, so it's gonna be fairy tale retellings. Right now, the ones I want to hit are two of them are already have been
Hmm.
done like to death, but Little Red Riding Hood and Beauty and the Beast. I've got some ideas for those, and then my personal favorite, which is The Little Match Girl. So I'm really excited to write that one. That's probably going to be a few years down. I think I'm going to tackle the more popular ones first. It's very melancholy. It's very sad.
I mean, aren't they all really? When you got step outside the Disneyfication of them, they're all pretty dark stories. So what drew you to fairy tale
I've always loved
retellings?
fairy tales. I was the weird kid like when Disney started putting out like Little Mermaid and stuff like that. I would search out the original ones and read it, and then I was like traumatized because of how dark they are. But I loved them, and I love reading like fairy tales from around the world and seeing like how the similarities are, even though they're from different cultures. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. But I also want to do them justice because I know that there's like a bazillion fairy tale retellings out there. So I don't want to just like do it as a cash grab. I want to do it because I'm like, I have a good idea and a good take on
Yeah.
it. So that's why I'm kind of just like letting it,
Hmm.
not quite plotting it, but I'm just
Yeah.
sort of letting it gestate, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I know what you mean. I know what
Yeah.
you mean. So you just let this idea sit for a little while in the back of your head, just kind of stewing. You know that I think you get kind of a sense when you're a pantser in particular, like when an idea is ready for you to just sit and start writing it. Because I don't know about you, but I found if I try and write before that point, I'll get to a point and then to be like, doesn't feel right, something's
Yeah.
missing.
Yeah. And I don't know if you feel this way either as a pantser, but I can't walk away from a manuscript for too long or I forget where I was going with it. Do you have that problem?
Mm, yeah. I've got two at the moment that I'd started towards the end of last year
Yep.
and just,
Yep. I just can't walk away from it. So, like, that's the other thing too. Like for book two, my mom got hurt midway while I was writing it, so I had to go back to Michigan and take care of her for a bit. And like it derailed what I was doing. I was like, I don't even know the story anymore. So for me, when I
yeah,
start a book, I kind of have to like just cram it in and get it done, and then I can relax in the editing.
yeah, yeah. How quickly can you write a book then? Because again, I'm still marveled. You've written 7 books in 4 years, and that's amazing. So you must have it. Obviously, like first couple probably took longer, and it's getting quicker.
I feel like I haven't done enough. Oh my gosh, I think I'm trying to just do too much. I don't know. I mean, I have an ongoing list of like book ideas and stuff I want to do, so that helps. So when it came to writing the rest of the series, I already sort of had just like the log line, I don't know what they call it in author world. Not maybe not the log line, but you know what I'm talking about, just like a blurb.
Yeah.
So I already that helped. This sounds weird. I trained as a journalist. I thrive on deadline. And so I also have a day job where I'm a writer. I'm a writer for a video game right now. So
Hmm.
I think like it forces me to like, okay, I did this for work. All right, now I'm going to do this for myself. A couple hours. All right, let's go. All right, now you know what I mean? And it sounds weird, but like having it be so structured and like versus if I just sometimes I'm like I want just like unfiltered time and I want to do this full time and then I'm like I'd never write. I'd be like, "Oh, I've got 8 hours to write my novel," and I just go like play video games or something. So it kind of it helps to have that structure for me. It's weird, but
Mm. Yeah. Well, if that's what works for you, having that deadline, that's what's gonna
mhm.
give you that window and that motivation. Yeah,
Oh,
fair
thank you.
enough. And now I have to ask, knowing that you write for video games, that's amazing as well. How does that differ?
It can be. You do have to take the game's design into consideration.
Hmm.
But it's a lot like you remember those choose your own adventure books?
Hmm.
It's a lot like that, where it's like, if they do this, then this line happens. If they do this, then this line
Right.
happens. So it's a lot of text because you're thinking of all the possibilities. Um, and it's sometimes a bit by committee, so there's a lot of backtracking
Yeah.
and rewriting, which is another reason why I think the novels have come out as fast as they have because when I write for myself, I can just go to town. You know what I mean? So it's also sort of a release for my brain. I don't know if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah. You can do whatever you want. Yeah. No one's gonna come and tell you, oh, that no, you have to go back and change that. You can just write whatever you want. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. So, what do you do when you're not writing there? So it sounds like actually, I mean, pretty busy, right? So you've got your job, video game writing.
For fun? I have fun. No. Um, this sounds so bad. I mean, I do find work kind of fun sometimes because it's creating, but I know what you mean. Besides the video games, like I play a lot of video games, I read a lot of
Mm,
stuff. I would say hiking, but the air quality's bad right now. It's not the time right now. Yeah. I mean, it just
your
like
time
it
is it
sounds
right now? Yeah.
boring, but
Hmm.
I don't find it like a job. I don't mind like playing new video games and like learning more about it as far as like because ours is a horror game, so like I don't like
Mm,
horror. I don't really watch a lot of it, but I've had to for work. So like you just
hmm.
like go to movies and you watch these horror things and you like learn about the craft and I enjoy it, even though it's like my job.
No, fair enough. It does sound very interesting and enjoyable, actually. So in terms of the video game writing, because you said horror is not usually something that you would be into. So to what extent do you get to choose, like what
The one
genre?
I'm writing for is with a company, so it's basically what the company president, like it's his IP and his brainchild. So we're basically like writing in that. I'm looking personally into like how to design a game, so I'm also writing
Mhm,
for myself, right? Like let's just add one more thing to my plate. But I think I look at things and I'm like, that looks like fun. I want to learn how to do it. Even though later on I'm like, why did I think that it's a lot of work?
mhm.
But one thing I would love to do is develop a video game based off of my IP. Because I love RPGs and I'm like, this world would make a great RPG. I just got to figure out how to do it,
Mm,
you know? So,
mhm. Yeah, that sounds amazing. And audiobook narration
oh,
as well.
well, I've been out in LA for a while now since 2010 and I've been an actor. And I started, it's so funny.
Hmm.
Um, I got a few voiceover gigs like for a feature film as a cartoon character and stuff like that. And so I was like, oh, like this is cool. I can do this. Why not? Because I'd been doing on camera before then.
Hmm.
And then I decided to quit my day job and go full time into acting,
Hmm.
and that was January 2020. Really bad timing, yeah. And I started doing more audiobooks during that time period, and it was so funny because every coach told their actor to pivot and go into voiceover. So like trying to get a microphone, it was like an 8-month wait. I was just like, "Oh my gosh." But I found I loved it. I mean, I love reading anyway. Um and so I just started doing more and more of it and like
Yeah.
the pandemic, I'm already introverted, so it made me more of a homebody. So I'm like, cool, I can be at home and read books and not go out. Like, this is great. Like, this is my dream
Mm.
job. So, right? Yeah. And it's cool because I'll do a lot of work for big publishers as well, and so it's stuff that hasn't been released, and there's some really amazing books out there. So I'm just like, "Ooh, I like this one," and I can't wait for like when it releases. I'm like, "I gotta read that ahead of you. It's
Mm.
cool." So
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Yeah, wow. Yeah, and acting
we
as well.
have to diversify, right? Like as writers, we're creators. We have to diversify.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so how
hmm
much acting have you done since, like, because obviously you've got so much else going on.
Um, Not as much on camera. So I don't know. I know you're out in the UK. I don't know how much you follow like US stuff, but we've kind of our industry's sort of been decimated by 2 years of strikes. Actually, right now we're still in a VO strike as well. And then now we have the fires. And so it's like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of scared to see what'll happen in the next year because I don't think people
Hmm.
can rebuild. You know what I mean? Like we already didn't have work for 2 years and now you've lost everything. Like it's pretty scary. So the on-camera stuff, I have not been doing as much. I like being home. It sounds so bad. I just love it. I joke that my writing is my retirement plan, but it's not really a good retirement plan at this point. It's getting there. We'll see.
Like you said, you're diversifying. You've got your fingers in a lot of different pies, so to speak. And all of it is stuff that you enjoy, which, ultimately I think is the most important thing. You're getting a lot from these things.
Yeah. And they all kind of feed into each other. Like one of the best things I did was during the pandemic, because my agent had suggested it, I took improv classes and I finished a whole curriculum with Upright Citizens Brigade, which is
Mhm.
great, by the way. And I don't know if I did it all online because of the pandemic. They
Mhm.
might have hybrid classes, so if anybody's interested. But what I loved was being a pantser, learning the improv thing actually helped me be a better writer. So it's weird, like these
Mm.
disciplines all sort of feed on each other anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine they do it because it's, like you said earlier, narrating the audiobooks as well, that probably helped kind of feed into ideas for your own world that you're building, and I guess also understand kind of structure of books and stuff that you're reading and understanding what works well and what doesn't work well. So yeah, all these different things have just, like I said, they've fed into each other. And improv, yeah, because that's so thinking on your feet, isn't it?
For sure. I mean, and when you think about it, this is not supposed to be a discussion, is plotting better than pantsing? But like life is improv. You don't know what's going to happen in the next moment. So why should your characters necessarily, you know what I mean? Like it's funny because one thing about improv is character
Yeah.
is king. Like as long as you're true to your character, like whatever happens, they should be reacting as their
Right.
character. Like if they're shy, they should be reacting as they're shy. If they're bold, they should be reacting as that. And my editor, who's also, we've worked on a lot of projects together, and
Hmm.
yeah, we've just done a ton of stuff together. He's a big plot person. And it's kind of funny because I'm a big character person, and his scripts are amazing, but you can tell when he's trying to shoehorn something in because he really wants this plot point. So like it's been a really good working with him because we bring out that where I'm like, "Oh, I should plot that better." And he's like, "Oh, I should think about the character more here." We bring that out in each other.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's a totally different way of approaching the story, really, isn't it? And I guess when you are writing a story, you have to learn to, as much as you can have a character focused books, there are going to be times when you do need to take into account actually how is the plot moving forward here and how can I make sure that this is flowing as it should. And it sounds like you have a good relationship with your editor and it kind of is someone that's worked with you for the whole series. I think that's so important, having that kind of relationship with someone who gets what you're going for, right? Gets your voice, is able to basically help polish your books up.
Yeah, he's been great. He and I, so we started a writing group here in LA before he moved, so that was like 10 years ago. We have a podcast together. We've worked on films together. So like we have been in the trenches with each other, which is really nice. And so he was the first one I called and I'm like, "Hey, I've got this book." And he's been so nice. He's like, "I can't wait to read the next one." I'm like, "Are you sure?" I know, cuz like 7 books later you feel bad. It's an ask every time. And if I have extra money, I'll throw it at him, but it's not like I'm making a ton off these. So I'm like, "I'm so sorry, it's not more." I mean, like, and that's another thing too. Like, I feel like I know people spend a lot of money on like editing and development and covers and all that. And that I'm not saying you shouldn't, but like sometimes just having a friend who knows the craft and is in the trenches with you is better than like I think, you know.
Yeah, because it's going through self-publishing, there are so many things that could cost a lot of money. And yeah, if you have someone that can provide that
Oh yeah,
service for you, because editors are expensive. Right, I recently discovered how pricey. Like, oof, it can really add up. If especially someone like yourself writing a huge series, that could really add up into the thousands of dollars if you were having to pay someone that you didn't know, and actually you've got the benefit of someone who is able to provide that service. You're still paying him, but
for sure. And I mean, I'm sure also like there's a bazillion different types of editor, so then you're like, you know what I mean? Like I'm sure like with you, you're like, which editor do I pick? Because I could get a developmental one, I could get one who's just doing like, the grammar. I could get it's a lot, you know. It's not perfect. Like I still, like I said, I still do my fourth pass on it. I feel bad asking him to
hmm,
like read it more than once or twice, but you
yeah.
know.
But I've heard a lot about the fact about reading out loud can be really helpful for just picking up those little things that can slip through. And it sounds like actually you get that you're recording your audiobook anyway, and it means that you have that final passover. So it's kind of, best of both worlds really, in that you're getting your audiobook out of it, but also able to double just have that final check over and make sure there's none of those little niggly mistakes. I mean, we all know as writers that there's always going to be a handful of things that slip through somehow. I just amazing, like some little mistakes that just cling on for dear life and you miss. But it
So
sounds like you do everything you
here's the
can.
thing. Yeah. I know it's frustrating, like years later, I've still found, issues in the first couple books, and I'm like, what? And especially if you print them out, like I've been printing them out and going to fairs and trying to sell them, I'm like, oh, great, like there's typos in
Yeah.
this, but you can't like get rid of the books because you spent money on it. So what do you do?
No, exactly. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I've kind of come to accept those typos. They are part of, like, it's just in there now. You kind of, you can drive yourself mad thinking about
Definitely.
them.
It's a special
It
edition.
happens. It
We'll
happens to
call it
all of
that.
us, really.
Limited edition.
What can you do? Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what like tips or advice would you give a newer author, someone who's setting out on their self-publishing journey, that you've learned? You have published a lot, you've probably learned a lot from that.
Oh, wow. Um, It's a good one. Just because, again, like I feel like I haven't done a lot in 4 years. So, and I know they say that we don't even hit it big until like our 30th book. So I've got a ways to go. So that maybe that's why I'm writing so quickly. Um, I would say like definitely don't edit yourself when you're writing the first draft. I think I did that a lot like with my first book. I was like, is this right, is this right, just write. It's going to be junky, it's going to be gross, like it's totally fine. As far as
Yeah.
marketing, it is a long lead time,
Mm,
which is actually kind of nice
yeah.
for authors because you can take your time and make sure it's a good book. And I think that's the other thing too, is like just because you're indie, don't skimp. Like, this is your art, this is your work. It deserves the best treatment it can get. Get yourself a good cover artist, get yourself a good editor, take the classes,
Mhm.
learn the craft, take the time, give it the best presentation you can give it. Don't get some like junky AI cover or something cheap, or you know what I mean? Like you're better than that. And we have to be competitive because people I think tend to look and go, "Oh,
Yeah.
self-publish? Oh, that must be some like, sloppy thing." No, it's not. There's actually some of my favorite authors are self-published. But you do have to make yourself competitive and give yourself a good presentation. And then just like watch and learn and like
Mhm.
everything. Like I said, like taking improv classes somehow ended up helping me a better writer. Like it's amazing these cross disciplines help you. This is actually funny. Going to the video
Mhm.
game writing, I was giving notes on something and I said, we need higher stakes. And that's an actor's term. Every scene has an objective and it has high stakes. And I'm like, but you need that in writing, in video games, whatever. You don't want to play a game where there's no stakes. You don't want to read a book where they're just like, there's a dragon to kill, but whatevs. We'll just like smoke a pipe or something. You know what I mean? That's boring. So, like, it's amazing that, like, it's cool if you're like, "I'm gonna take a break and take an acting class," or, "I wanna learn how to direct," or then it helps you think visually, and then you know how to write visually, you know what I mean? So, yeah, like, cross-discipline all the time, I think it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it sounds like you actually learn things that perhaps you didn't expect, which is the case for yourself. You didn't realize that doing improv would help with your writing, but it did. Yeah,
Oh,
that's a good advice. Cool. Okay, so we're on to the quick fire round. So, I mean, I always say one answer, no explanation, and then I end up asking about the answers.
ooh,
So we'll just see
would
what
be
happens.
favorite series, The Enchanted Forest Chronicles by Patricia C. Reedy. Okay, favorite video game of all time is Skyborn. Favorite video game right now is Echoes of Wisdom, the new Zelda.
Hmm.
It's so cute. It's so good. I love it.
Ah, yeah, that looks good.
Oh, I've been drinking a lot of tea to be healthy, but I love boba. I love boba. Oh my gosh. It's so bad for me, but I love it.
Cool. I'm a tea person myself. Yeah. So to wrap up, then tell us where we can follow you because you've mentioned about being on a podcast and stuff as well. So if you want to tell us, where to follow your social, all
All
the
the
stuff,
things.
but
All right. So you can find me at rachanee.net. It's just my first name,
mm-hmm,
Rachanee.net. I also sell my books direct there at a discount. So if want to help an author out, you can do that. You can also buy my books. The first one is Heir of Amber and Fire. They all have that convention, Heir of something, the Kingdom Legacy series on Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, Kobo, Google, wherever else, trying to think. Audio, ebook, and paperback. My podcast is called Writers Group Therapy. So you can also find that on Apple and iHeartRadio, and that's I think it's
mm-hmm,
writersgrouptherapy.com. On social, I'm at Rachanee Lumayno pretty much on every platform. So Instagram, what is it now? X, YouTube, yeah, just Rachanee Lumayno, and yeah, I think that's it.
mm-hmm. Perfect. Okay, I'll leave links below the video for anyone that wants to follow. But yeah, I'll be sure to check those out too. Yeah, I'm going to be adding your entire series to my list of books to read as well. This just keeps happening. Anyway, thank you so much, Roshani, for joining us. It's been amazing chatting, getting to know you. Yeah, you have to come back in the future when you
Thank you so much for having me. I
will
appreciate it.
be very